All right. So, is it recording? I think so.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay. So our poem was To His Coy Mistress by Andrew Marvell, and that's what the man looked like. Very interesting looking. So this is the author's background. So Andrew Marvell was born in 1621, and he grew up in the Yorkshire town of Hull, England. So he's a British dude. There has been a lot of inconsistencies and ambiguities within his work, as well as a lack of information about his personal life, which has made him a source of fascination for scholars since his work found recognition in the early decades of the 20th century. So Marvell spent most of the 1650s working as a tutor, and scholars believe that his greatest lyrics were written during this time. He was then elected to Parliament in 1660 and became a very well-known politician. His very public position led Marvell away from the publication, but that didn't stop his satirical eye. He continued to criticize and mock both the court and Parliament. He then died in 1968 and is now considered one of the greatest poets of the 17th century. He published very little of his political satire and complex lyrics in his lifetime, but he did publish a handful of poems and anthologies, and a collection of his work didn't appear until 3 years after his death, when his nephew compiled and found a publisher for miscellaneous poems. So, To His Coy Mistress is considered one of Marvell's finest works and is possibly the best recognized Carpe Diem poem in English. The date of its composition is unknown, but it may have been written in the early 1650s when he was serving as a tutor for the daughter of commander of the New Model Army. So this is the poem. So, had we but whirled enough in time, this coyness lady were no crime. We would sit down and think which way to walk and pass our long love's day. Thou by the Indian Gage's side, should rubies find I by the tide, of Humber would complain I would love you 10 years before the flood. And you should, if you please, refuse till the conversion of the Jews. My vegetable love should grow vaster than empires and more slow, and 100 years should go to praise thine eyes, and on thy forehead gaze, 200 to adore each breast, but 30,000 to the rest, an age at least to every part, and the last age should show your heart.
I can read this one. For lady, you deserve this state, nor would I love at a lower rate. But at my back, I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near, and yonder, all before us lie, deserts of vast eternity. Thy beautiful shall no more be found, nor in thy marble vault shall sound my echoing song. Then one shall try that long preserved virginity, and your quaint honour turn to dust, and into ashes all my lust. The grave's a fine and private place, but none, I think, do there embrace.
Now therefore, while the youthful hue sits on thy skin like morning dew, and while thy willing soul transpires at every pore with instant fires, now let us sport us while we may, and now, like amorous birds of prey, rather at once our time devour, than languish in his slow-chapped power. Let us all our strength and all, let us roll all our strength and all, our sweetness up into one ball, and tear our pleasures with rough strife through the iron gates of life. Thus, though we cannot make our sun stand still, yet we will make him run.
To His Coy Mistress is a metaphysical poem. Metaphysical poetry questions human fertility, love, God, or death, as well as exploring philosophy. Metaphysical poetry can also be characterized by its tendency to question reality while also using wit to do so. In this particular poem, Marvell is attempting to convince his lover to have sex with him. Marvell explains to his lover that time is scarce and that if it were up to him, and if he had all the time in the world, he would take the time to admire his lover's beauty. But unfortunately, time doesn't allow for its sluggishness, and they must live life to the fullest. To his coy mistress utilizes hyperbole, imagery, satire, and end rhyme, while in iambic tetrameter. And there are examples of each of the devices used. Um, um, Hyperbole. Here's an example of a hyperbole. "An 100 years should go to praise thine eyes, and on thy forehead gaze, 200 to adore each breast, but 30,000 to the rest."
So
And
yeah, so he's being dramatic there, being like he would
yeah,
pay that much money to just admire her beauty, which is very dramatic because no one would do that.
yes,
He's just trying to show how like how much he like cares for her and stuff, and like he wants her to fall for him.
right. An example of imagery: "Thus though we cannot make our sun stand still, yet we will make him run." It, I mean, very self-explanatory.
You can very much imagine that situation.
Yes. Um, Satire: "My echoing song, then worms shall try that long-preserved virginity." Um,
So we were not very comfortable with this line of the poem. We thought it was kind of weird and kind of like the fact that he was like a tutor and then he was writing stuff like that is kind of weird to think about. So basically when he's with this he's saying like, "Oh, I need to take your virginity before you die, but because if I don't then the worms will like in your grave," which is just so like extra and like I don't even know how you would think about that, but I'll get more into that as I talk about the meaning of the poem.
yeah. And in rhyme: "Have we for world enough time, this coyness lady, where no crime." So he's basically like, if if we weren't staring death in the face, then you can be shy all you want to, but unfortunately, we are. So please hurry up. We have no time for this.
And then the poem has a lot of end rhyme. If we go out, you can see it. It'll be like time, crime, way, day, side, tide, wood, flood. And it goes all throughout the poem doing that. So he uses a lot of end rhyme. And now I'm talking about the meaning of the poem. So, To His Coy Mistress is a Carpe Diem poem that has two meanings. So, first, the speaker is addressing a woman who has been kind of slow to respond to his romantic advances, basically kind of thinks she's a prude. He's trying to persuade her to have sex with him. He explains how if they had all the time in the world, then he'd have no problem taking their relationship slowly. But however, he goes on to explain that they're like mortal humans, and once they die, they can't be intimate together, so they have to do it now. Like, he's like, there's not enough time in the world, we have to do it now. But secondly, the speaker is also shedding light on the fact that human life is short and how death is inevitable and grotesque. So the author's use of literary devices such as imagery and hyperbole help strengthen the understanding of the poem because it helps emphasize how passionate the speaker is about getting this girl. Like, as we mentioned in the previous slide, the imagery and hyperbole, he's just being dramatic and flamboyant, and he's trying to help us picture how like beautiful this girl is and how much he cares for her because that's how um he's trying to persuade a reluctant woman. That's his like way. He's using his words to try to persuade her. In addition, knowing the historical context under which this poem was written also helps us understand the poem because, like I previously mentioned, this poem was most likely written while he was tutoring someone's daughter. So that means that someone's daughter was probably the inspiration for this poem, which is kind of weird to think about.
Hmm.
And This poem I feel like is still relevant because like, there's still men out there who try to use like compliments and sweet talk to try to get a girl when in reality they don't really, care about getting to know her. Do you have more to say on how it's still relevant?
Um, yeah, actually. It's kind of interesting to see how how men like this type of culture, I guess, has really not changed over the years. And like, yeah, it's
Yeah, I get what you're trying to say. Like this was written like in the 1650s and now it's like 2021.
yeah,
I feel like you could still relate this poem now how the poem
yeah,
the title is literally to like his coy mistress, which would be like I'm trying to like persuade a woman, and it's like
right,
what
right.
about our brain? Like you gotta try, like what about our smarts? And like this poem definitely just doesn't focus on that, and he uses death and how like time is short as a way to try to basically kind of like manipulate her into like it is like manipulation because he's like, oh, like we don't have enough time. Like come on, like why are you wanting to take things so slowly? And it's just I feel like that could still definitely be relevant in today's society.
Yeah. The only difference between now and then is that it's done over Snapchat and Instagram DMs.
Exactly. Before it was probably done over like letters and stuff,
Yeah,
but now
agent
it's
carriers.
even more complicated. Exactly. So, our reaction to the poem is that it was a pretty perverted way to say that time is short and you have to seize the day or carpe diem. And we found it insulting that he was saying that, oh, we have to do it before that, like, in the text from the poem, it said, thy beauty shall no more nay be found, which shows how he doesn't really value her as a person and just wants her body and is like you're only going to be beautiful for so long, like you can't there's no way you can like die before we do this. And he's you want to go ahead.
Yeah. Marvel attempts to lace his words with sweetness by phrasing each sentence in a way that suggests that he truly cares about running out of time with his partner, but really, he does not care at all. He wants her body as soon as he can have it, and he doesn't really want to take no as an answer. Like it's the way he formats every line makes it seem like it's such a romantic, like a love letter, when in reality he's like, if we don't do this now, then you're gonna be ugly and old, and I'm not gonna want you. So, and you wouldn't want that to happen. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
And
Um,
although this poem is like it's considered to be one of like the best carpe diem poems, we just found it to be like misogynistic and creepy. Like you saw the whole like the you're gonna let the worms take your virginity, like that was just weird. Like I guess that was like 1650s humor, but like kind of weird. And then um he does make good points, being like time does go by fast and it should be cherished, but the way he uses time is kind of for his own selfish gains. He's not like he has no like he really doesn't have any good intentions, and maybe he did. Maybe like when he was writing this, he was truly trying to be like, oh, we really should try to cherish time and stuff. But I feel like from our point of view, we saw it more as of like, oh, he's just trying to like get with her before because he's just trying to take things fast. He doesn't want to take things slowly.
right. Um, and also I think he kind of puts the blame on the woman for being so shy.
Hmm.
He's like, he's like, well, since you're so shy, you know, you have to take things slow when we shouldn't have to. When that, I mean, like she had no reason to be shy. She had no reason to want to take things slow. And like she was selfish for keeping herself from him. Um, which kind of is similar to like the rape culture today. Um, it's kind of like, well, Um, well, we're together. We've been together. Why don't you want to give me anything, like, in return? Like, very transactional when it shouldn't have to be. Like, if you have to go to the lengths to write a poem for why your partner,
Exactly.
like, maybe there's something you guys need to talk about.
Exactly. And like
Like,
the way he's writing it, it's obviously easy to tell that this woman has been saying no. She's like, no. And then like you can tell he's like, this is a persuasive poem. Like it is his intention is to try to persuade someone to sleep with him. And it's like, how can that, like, what kind of message is that sending?
right. What kind of audience was this meant for?
It was definitely,
Like,
yeah, like this definitely, this makes you want to take it back to time in history where it's like like when this poem came out, it's like, what kind of audience was reading this and what kind of like, people are going to read this and be like, oh, they're going to think this is what it's okay to do this, to try to like persuade a woman like this, and it's not.
exactly. Exactly.
There's, there's so many parts of the poem where you can like go through it and just like see how dramatic he's being to try to convince her. He'll be like, thou's by Indian gauge's side, shot rubies fine. He's saying how like he'll walk all these places and like there's even this part where it's like, I would love you 10 years before the flood, not blood. He's bringing in like a biblical allusions and stuff and like bringing in Christianity, and then he also says till the conversion of the Jews, and he's just very dramatic and flamboyant just to try to get someone to sleep with him. So that was what we thought of the poem.
Um, yeah. Yeah.